All right, guys, so we're going to get started while some of the folks are finishing their lunch. I was asked to talk about where in the world is green hydrogen. When I first heard about this title, I thought to myself, well, it sounds like when hell is green hydrogen, that may be my French ears, but that's really how it sounded to me. And in a way, it's true, The green molecule is precious, is scarce, and it can be a very significant difference, when we have it in abundant form, when it's competitive, it's easy to sell and it's easy operations. When we struggle to find it, we guarantee to our clients 97% uptime. We're delivering more than 97% uptime, and I think that shows how robust Plug's operation and businesses are. But when we lack the access to the molecule, it gives us sweat and tears, and to our clients as well. So it's a bit where in the hell is green hydrogen. So my name is Benjamin Haycraft. I'm leading Plug Power's operations in Europe, and maybe we can start with some basics. So number one, the safe harbor statement, but number two. When we think where is green hydrogen, there are two ways to look at it. The first question is, where is it produced? The second question is where it is consumed. And you're going to get different answers. So when you look today where it is produced, it's produced very close to the demand centers. I was looking at the map of IHS on where are the first projects committed. And you have the bulk of those in Western Europe and in the US. And this is where you have the vast majority of the projects. When you look a little bit later on at the projects that are in development phase, in engineering phases, suddenly you start to see different places where those projects effectively are being built. So you see some in the Nordics, you see some in the Sunbelt in the US, you see some, regional projects where you can get access to much cheaper electricity but that are still not too far away from the demand centers. And then, if you look at the projects in early stage development, this is when suddenly you start to see gigawatt scale projects being developed in locations like Oman, like Australia, like Chile, like the Nordics, like Quebec, where you have incredible access to renewable electricity and where you can effectively run the cost down. So when you think where it is produced, you have different answers depending on whether you look short-term or long-term, but where you can produce the most competitive hydrogen molecule at scale, really what you need to think about is 4 items. The first one is excellent combined wind, solar, and other renewable resources. When you have hydro, it's the best renewable source you can get, right? You can run your electrolyzer with a base load. It's fantastic. If I take combined wind and solar, so if I combine wind and solar in France, may get 45% capacity factor. If I take combined wind and solar in Spain, I'll get above 50%. If I take combined wind and solar in Finland, I'll get above 60%. So you may think, by the way, solar is crap in Finland. It's kind of true, but the truth is, for 6 months of the year, I have solar almost all the time, even when there's no wind. So it's very complementary. Excellent combined wind, solar, renewable resources is the driver number one. We talked about efficiency this morning, but the truth is, if I can reduce the cost of the sourcing of that electricity, that is the driver number one to producing competitive green hydrogen. The driver number two is the ability to scale production. Ability to scale production, that means having access to land and having access to interconnection. Yes?
Just curious, what's that factor for the plant you have in Georgia and Texas?
So that's a very good question. I'll come back to you because I actually have the numbers for all my sites in Europe.
Is it slightly higher?
But I think it's pretty high in Texas and Georgia, but I will come back to you on this one. I'll check with Sanjay and let you know. So ability to scale production, you need land. You know, if you go to the Netherlands, if you go to France, if you go to Spain, it's actually difficult to find the land. If you go to Finland, you know, it's not that great to live up north in Finland. So you have space. You need interconnection. You know, some countries have been smarter than others on that and have anticipated the need for electrification. When you have interconnection, you can actually, you're not only dependent of the renewable resources that are sitting next door, you can also get access to the renewable electricity that is connected through the grid. You need distribution infrastructure. You know, if you think about our project in Finland, you know, we have for the project where we plan to produce ammonia, it's in Kokkola. It's already a big ammonia port. You have deep water access. You have all the infrastructure in place to move around ammonia, which is not, you know, a trivial thing. And so, you know, distribution infrastructure is very critical. And the fourth thing, and this actually matters a lot. It matters for economical reasons, but it also matters for you know, security of supply, stable, predictable geopolitical risk. Being in Europe, being based in Europe, we had, you know, a bit of a tragic reminder of that with the war in Ukraine. But this matters a lot. It matters because, you know, typically renewable plants are being built with 90% debt. And so, you know, when you have an unstable and unpredictable geopolitical risk, you have much higher interest rates, much higher power costs. And then obviously security of supply is critical. So these are the criteria that one need to think about when, you know, how can I produce the most competitive green hydrogen molecule? And I think we have two good examples of that. We have Finland, obviously I've discussed that a bit, but you know, New York connected to a hydroelectric plant that's been built, that has been amortized. You know, this is a fantastic example of how to produce competitive green hydrogen at scale. Now, the interesting thing is, quite often, where you can produce the most competitive hydrogen production at scale is not where it's going to be consumed. You know, if you go to Chile, if you go to Australia, if you go to north of Finland, you don't have much industries, many people, you know, in the vicinity to effectively offtake that hydrogen. So where is hydrogen critical? First of all, in industrial clusters. You know, if you think about Antwerp, Antwerp is the largest chemical cluster in Europe. It's the second largest industrial port. I mentioned it this morning. You know, it's 200 to 300,000 tons per year of hydrogen consumed, grey mostly, of which, you know, 42% will need to be decarbonized by 2030. So that's at least 80,000 tons per year. I need to check the math there, but it's a significant number. And so, you know, this is where hydrogen is critical. Second case is more related to mobility. When you have a zero or low emission area, hydrogen becomes absolutely critical. You know, we are commissioning in the first semester of 2024 a stationary fuel cell in Germany to charge battery electric vehicles, because those vehicles will need to be electric to be able to enter into the city for last mile deliveries, but they don't have access to a grid, not before 27, 28. So what did these guys do? Is the ability to operate at primes, you know? So, okay, we'll put a stationary fuel cell, we're going to take hydrogen, we're going to produce electricity, we're going to charge a battery, and with those batteries we're going to power the electric motor of the vehicles and deliver the goods in the cities. Lack of electrical grid access is the same issue. So these two, lack of electrical grid access, zero and low emission areas, are very much connected with one another. And the fourth one is areas with binding decarbonization targets. I mean, we've discussed that this morning quite extensively, but you know, 42% is pretty significant. So, you know, electrolyzer short-term focus and hydrogen generation projects short-term focus. I want to show this slide for Europe. So, you know, we often talk about 20 million tons by 2030, 10 million tons domestically produced, 10 million tons imported. So this is the reason. Basically, if you look at those numbers, you know, you have close to 8 million tons, and you can substitute green to grey. And that is probably the driver number one and the first market that is the low-hanging fruit where you can effectively, decarbonize. So that's why Total, for instance, launched an RFP. You may have seen that for 500,000 tons per year of hydrogen, of renewable hydrogen. And the reason Total needs that is really to decarbonize their European refineries. So that's the low-hanging fruit number one. The second, if you look beyond refineries, ammonia that serves the fertilizer market, methanol, and others, then you have the green steel. There was a very significant event something like 2 weeks ago. You may have noticed it. H2 Green Steel raised 1.5 billion euros for their project in the north of Sweden. Same rationale as Finland. You're up north, great renewable resources, access to land, etc., etc. And so they're building this green steel plant. And that was wonderful news to us because we have this venture called Gravity that has two projects, one in Finland with Plug in Kristinestad and one in the southeast of France in Fos-sur-Mer. And the purpose is to produce green DRI, or I should say green HBI, because actually it's not for a furnace that is sitting next door, it's to be exported to other furnaces. But green steel, there is no other pathway to decarbonize steel than with green hydrogen. And the beauty of that is that it's almost already in the money. So if you take a car manufactured with green steel, if you take the same car manufactured with grey steel, the premium for the end consumer is 500 euros. That's very digestible. And it's going to be in the money because you have, regulations like the cross-border adjustment mechanism, the CBAM, that's going to tax imported grey steel and stuff like that. So it's actually going to be in the money pretty fast by 2027, where you won't see a premium in the market. So that makes the adoption for green steel very, very easy. So the short-term focus really on where is it consumed is that industry, green steel, refineries, ammonia, etc. So that's the way it's consumed. Now you may wonder about mobility, and that's a good question because we are pretty active in that space. So mobility is going to take off on the back of low emission areas, on the back of lack of access to electric grid, and with the same rationale where Plug has sold its forklift fleets, which is green productivity. You can operate the same logistic route with fewer vehicles if you run on fuel cell than if you run on batteries. So that is something that is quite significant. So where is green hydrogen? Well, everywhere. So you're going to say thank you. I attended that session for that. But short answer is short term, it's close to the demand centers. Longer term, we see emerge gigawatt scale projects in locations where you have fantastic access to renewables. What we don't know exactly yet is what are going to be the carriers of choice to move the hydrogen from those locations, when you are in remote Middle East, when you are in Chile. People talk a lot about ammonia. Actually, 25% of the gigawatt scale projects are focused on ammonia today, according to IHS. And so that's going to be significant. And potentially ammonia will be one of the main carriers. But there will probably be others. And that's something that's still a bit unclear, but that's going to materialize over time. Now, I would like to go, to say one word about that. When you think about where it is produced, where it is consumed, I think Plug is uniquely positioned to take advantage of that opportunity. So when you think about Plug, we usually say we are a vertically integrated player and a global leader in the hydrogen economy. But we really have three businesses. At heart, Plug is a technology company. Started with fuel cell, moved to electrolyzers, moved to liquefiers. We scaled up our fuel cells. So it's a green hydrogen technology company selling equipment. We announced today Arcadia. We announced some 6 months ago Uniper for 100 megawatt to decarbonize the natural gas grid. in the Netherlands. We announced a few weeks ago 100 megawatt for Galp to decarbonize one of their refineries, and that's electrolyzer cells. That's the technology that Plug is bringing to the hydrogen market to effectively decarbonize. We use that green hydrogen technology to do several things. One of them is, the energy business. The energy business really is about selling a green molecule. So, our project in the Port of Antwerp is about selling molecules for industrial applications. Our energy BU, our hydrogen production, also helps sell molecules to high-via consumers or to stationary fuel cells, like in Germany for the project I just mentioned. And that energy also goes into our infrastructure. And what I mean by infrastructure, and I think that's something that people don't always fully appreciate. We've deployed more than 200 material handling sites globally. We're accelerating that in Europe significantly. I have two types of sites in Europe. I have with the big logistic providers and our clients. I have the big warehouses in which I have a lot of trucks, a lot of forklift, and I have the distribution centers where I have a lot of vans and a lot of trucks. Today, I'm deploying storage infrastructure, compression infrastructure to serve forklift or to serve vans, but I can upscale that infrastructure with a capex of 3 or 4 times more and increase the volume by 20 times when the trucks are here. So we have that infrastructure business, and what yields into that infrastructure business is the hydrogen that we've produced with the energy BU, and the applications. We're able to drive that because we are a green hydrogen technology equipment provider. So that's why at heart I think those very, very synergistic businesses sets Plug in a unique position to take advantage of the growth in the hydrogen economy market. So with that, I will be pleased to answer any question you may have.
About the timetable and,
Yep.
and how that's changing. Like obviously, as you guys kind of go through your Salesforce to kind of facilities and then start moving forward, if you could talk about how much efficiency you can get from a time perspective for some of these projects.
So just to make sure I understand your question is how can we get to a much better efficiency for electrolyzers, for fuel cells, etc., to reduce, on the one hand, the need for electricity to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen, and then to have more value in the end product for our customers?
I'm
sorry?
about, like, how fast can you go, right? And how do you speed up the process?
How fast can we go in what, sorry?
In terms of construction and build up.
Oh, in construction and build-up? Okay, sorry. For green hydrogen sites. Okay. I think, so that's a good question. We have been able to build Georgia and reach mechanical completion at what I would call lightning fast. 14 months to mechanical to reach mechanical completion was very, very fast. It would actually be pretty difficult to do the exact same thing in Europe because from a regulation standpoint, from a permitting standpoint, it's way more heavy. Now, what we can do is simplify the construction process. And that is in the product development stage that we can manage that. So, we have today, for instance, just to take one example, you need to put a building around certain equipment on the plant. We are thinking how to actually get rid of those buildings. If you get rid of those buildings, you can just, drop a piece of equipment and then get the plant built much quicker. So there are things that are outside of our control, like, the fact that you need to go through a FEED process, a front-end engineering design in Europe. That's probably not going to move away because most of the European countries require that to get your permit to build it. But there are other things that are in our control in the way we develop product, in the way we factor in the learnings from the first sites that will help us accelerate. So it's difficult to give you an answer in terms of how fast can we accelerate. What I think we'll be able to accelerate in a significant manner is the development of the sites from an engineering standpoint. To give you one example, we're looking at a site in Finland that is a bit of a copy-paste of the Antwerp project. From an engineering standpoint, we're completing the front-end engineering design as we speak. So the project is very much advanced on the engineering side. Because it's a copy-paste of Antwerp on the gaseous side for one of the projects in Finland, we actually called it a fast-track project. We think we can complete the design of the site in the course of 24 to be able to basically submit the permit right after. So, if you think about it, it took us 2 years to get there with Antwerp. It would take us, less than a year to get in the same position in Finland. I think, this is one area where we can accelerate significantly. The other area on the construction side is getting much more modular to build out our plans. Yes?
Here in the U.S., they have started talking about partnering with, say, nuclear facilities.
Yep.
Is there much talk of that in Europe? Obviously, France, very much nuclear, where they can use excess capacity then to generate hydrogen.
That's a very controversial topic in Europe.
Is it?
So we have, in Europe, these rules with a delay, but about additionality, about temporality, about regionality. And these rules are way more flexible when you have a decarbonized grid. So basically, Europe says if you have a grid that is decarbonized at 90%, then, the need of additionality, kind of goes away and things like that. So, if you look at our pipeline of projects, it's very much focused on the countries where you can have a low carbon intensity of the grid. So France, Denmark, Finland, and some of those countries are pro-nuclear. Finland just commissioned a nuclear power plant and potentially will be commissioning more small modular reactors in Finland. France obviously has its big nuclear park and I think more than the vast majority of the electricity mix in France is nuclear. I think what matters for our clients is the CO2 content of the products we deliver to them. I think then the construct around, should it be renewable, should it be nuclear, should it go with additionality, should it go with temporality, that's defensive measures to make sure that one does not produce hydrogen with a coal power plant, which makes sense, by the way. But what matters for our clients ultimately is, and for the world as well, I believe, is that we decarbonize our processes, our industrial processes, our mobility applications, our cities, if you look in the ESG reports, when people look at scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, they don't look at, oh, I bought green hydrogen. No, they look at CO2 content. If we have to buy electricity in Europe from nuclear power, that's not an issue from my standpoint.
So the focus is more on like a refinery somewhere, right, with a higher carbon footprint.
Yep. Yeah, the focus is today getting access to the cheapest electron to be able to produce the most competitive green hydrogen molecule, expand the market as fast as we can, and find, typical industrial off-takers and mobility applications to also help accelerate that side of the business with the applications from José Luis.
Okay.
Any other question? Yes, please.
So one would assume that the existing wind, solar, hydro capacity out there has been built to support the electric grid. Given that, is Plug in Europe planning to co-develop nuclear, solar, wind resources along to support your plans?
So there are different answers to that. It's interesting. One of the big foundation of our partnership with Acciona and our JV Acciona Plug is that, so Acciona Energia is, the largest 100% renewable company in Iberia. and a significant developer there. And they have that huge pipeline. And a lot of the renewable sites that they've developed, they cannot push and sell electricity into the grid. So we actually take advantage of that, and we co-locate an electrolyzer there. We pull electricity from the grid for the hours during which the renewable plant doesn't produce, and we get PPAs from the market for those. But we take advantage of that. So that's one side of it. You have the same issue, for instance, in the Netherlands. Today, in many instances in the Netherlands, you are not allowed to inject renewable electricity in the grid. It's just congested, so you're not allowed to do that. And then there are other countries, obviously Finland is a good example, where obviously we have some pretty advanced discussions with nuclear project development, with renewable developers, to help scale up that renewable capacity. The big advantage of renewables is that building a solar farm, building a windmill is actually pretty fast. It's much simpler than building an electrolyzer plant, which is also much simpler to building a nuclear power plant. So that's the simpler, the faster you can get. So you probably will need to have all three kind of situations, and sometimes you'll benefit from. You don't have one catch-it-all answer, basically. In some cases, you need to co-locate. In some others, you just pull in the grid, because the grid infrastructure is fantastic, like in Finland. And in some other cases, you do a mix of both. Yes?
With the expectation that hydrogen costs will decline, how do you manage the off-takers' expectations that hydrogen could be cheaper in the future?
So I think that the biggest driver of the hydrogen cost decline is actually the fact that the hydrogen market is going to become more competitive, more liquid, and that's what's going to drive the cost down drastically. Because you have the market price, and then you have the cost to manufacture. The cost to manufacture and the market price today have nothing to do with one another. So I think that's going to be the first and most drastic measure. You will have, in some cases indeed, a significant decline in the cost of producing hydrogen. In some others, there will be other areas where there will be probably a saturation of the market for accessing the renewable electricity. And in that case, it's going to be difficult to significantly reduce that cost of hydrogen production, which is why you need to pick the right location. If you take Germany, for instance, Germany has a heavily carbonized grid, electric grid. Today, people are fighting to get access to the renewable electricity in a fierce way in Germany. Producing competitive hydrogen in Germany is pretty difficult. Producing more competitive hydrogen tomorrow is probably even more difficult. But it's a completely different situation, for instance, in Norway, in Sweden, in Denmark, where indeed you'll see a big decline of the cost. So the key for us is making sure that we can put our hands on the best sites where we're going to be able to produce the most competitive hydrogen, and then sell that to our customers and grow the market as fast as we can. That's one area where Plug is unique. We are vertically integrated, so all our vested interests are in growing the hydrogen economy as fast as we can.
Sorry, so just to follow up, so long-term offtakes with sort of price
Yeah.
certainty, you're not locking in costs on, or offtake pricing?
Well, there's no one offtake contract alike with the other, but generally speaking, either we have fixed the cost and we can fix the offtake price, or we have a floating cost and then we need to have a floating price with the customer as well.
Okay.
All right, I think it's, I see the red dot clicking, so I think I need to stop there. But thank you very much for attending the session, and I look forward to following up the discussion if you want to. Thank you.